Hi everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make a very simple wire bangle with a little decorative beading front here. So you have the bag like this, and then you just open it here and then put it back on like that. These are the bracelets I showed you that I was going to do in my last tutorial. So the choker tutorial that I made, these are the two that will match those sets. So let me grab one of the necklaces so you can see. Here is the opalite one, and here is the bracelet I made to go with it. Very nice, looks really good together. And I will be making the purple one, which goes with this one. Goes really nice together too today. And I will also make one of these. These are also some beads that are in your treasure bag. And you can see I've made 3 of these to stack together. I have a couple of them on right now in the purple color, and this one would go nicely with that too. That's how I made them, for them to go together like this. And I just used, for these ones, I found some gemstones, some larger nice gemstones in my personal stash. This one's turquoise actually, and I decided to make something to go with the ones that I had from the treasure bag. You can use any beads you have on hand. I will discuss and try to show you exactly how to adjust according to what you put in front, because of course if you have a longer span, then you're going to have less wire in the back. If you have a shorter span, you're going to have more wire that comes around. And you can use any beads you would like to do this. Turns out really nice, and it's a very simple process. So let's go ahead and look and see what it takes to make these particular bangles. Okay, for this project today, we are going to be using 12 gauge wire. Now, listen to this, because I know that a lot of people zoom past this part. This is important. You can find a lot of 12 gauge wire online that is aluminum. We do not want aluminum. It's too soft for this particular project. You want to get silver or gold plated or just bare copper wire. So it needs to be copper wire. This is craft wire. It's silver plated copper, and it's 12 gauge. And you want to get a decent amount so that you can do a couple of practice bracelets, so that you can get your length and the size of your loops and everything down, and then with a couple practice, and then you can make your pieces. Because anytime you're learning to work with wire, you need a little practice. So I recommend that you get a fairly decent sized package or 2 packages. This was a fairly large package that I think I found at Michael's. I have found the same thing on Amazon, and I can post a link. It's a smaller package, so I would recommend getting 2 if you can. Just so that you have enough so that you can play with it, or you can make multiple bracelets like I have. So on each bracelet, I have adjusted the amount of wire I cut, the size of loops I made, the size of my top that I've made, simply because for each one I was practicing and learning exactly what I could do. And for each bracelet style, I needed it to be a little bit different. So these are 3 that I've made in kind of a turquoise tone. I've used the 3 8mm electroplated beads that are in the bag. Here's one I made to match our last project with the shell beads and the opalite beads. And then I've made some in purple too. And I'm going to do that, since I did it with our last video, I'm going to show you how to make this one so that you can do either one of these with your bag. And I also made one in purple with the 3 beads in the bag also that are the 8mm round. And then I have some really nice amethyst that I made this one out of. And this one I made with a nice piece of turquoise from my Gemstones personal stash. So I've made a few that I can stack together. And if you look at these, they look really nice together. Now I know I'm talking a lot for the intro, but it is important. So you're going to need a ruler. You're going to need your 12 gauge wire. You're also going to need some 18 gauge wire. Now you can use a smaller gauge for this particular part if you'd like, but 18 has been working very well for me. So I'm using 18 gauge and 12 gauge. And then I'm going to be using my memory wire cutters simply because this 12 gauge wire is very strong and it kind of damages your regular flush cutters. So you can have your flush cutters out for your 18 gauge, but for your 12 gauge, use a heavier wire cutter even if you have to get something out of the garage. Then I'm also having out my chain nose pliers, my round nose pliers, and my regular flat nose pliers, just to have them there in case I need them. I also like to have a crimping plier just to push in my extra wires. Not necessary, but it's nice to have. Nylon nose plier, and then I have my baling pliers. You can do this with a regular round nose if you'd like, but if you'd like a pair of baling pliers like I'm going to use, I can also post a link for that. Again, I'm not promoting these products. I'm just making the links available because people will ask me where I got what I'm using. So that's what I have. Then I'm also going to be using my little dabbing hammer and a bracelet mandrel. Again, I got these on Amazon also a while back, so I'm not sure if I can find the links for them. This is an oval bracelet mandrel and it's metal, so I can hammer on it. And you can find something round that you can use to make your bracelet. I used to use an olive jar a lot because of the tall, skinny green olives. It worked well, but it's glass, so you can't really hammer on it. So you can find something. It's really nice to have, if you're going to be working with wire, it's really nice to have an actual metal mandrel. But again, you don't have to. So then I also have this little file out. You can also use an emery board that you use for your fingernails. You can use one of those too. I just like to kind of soften the edges after I cut the 12 gauge wire. So that's what we're going to be using. As far as beads are concerned, for this particular one that I'm making for the bead bag to match the last set, I'm going to be using about 8 of the little disc beads, and I'm going to be using 3 6mm round beads, and I am going to be using 6 bead caps of your choice, whatever you'd like that fits around your beads nicely. So it's basically going to look like this. On this one, I used just spacer beads on either side of the pearls and then just the bead caps in the middle. You can do that. You can choose anything you want to make this with. On this one, for the opalite bag, I used my bead caps and 3 of the 6mm opalite beads and 8 of the disc beads. So you can make this any way you want. So go ahead and gather your things together and we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to make this type of bracelet here to match the tutorial I did in my last video. So as you can notice, the back portion of this is about 3/4 of the way around. I mean, it's a wide opening here because this span is about 2 to 2.5 inches long when we make the top here. So we're going to cut less wire than we would for, say, something like this because the wire doesn't go quite as much around. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get our wire. Now I'm making this, it's measures to be about, I would say this is about a 7.5, let me look on my wrist here. This is about a 7.5 inch bracelet. So what the measurements I'm giving you here is going to be 7 for like a 7 or a 7.5 inch bracelet. So if your wrist is 6.5 inches, 7 inches, this is going to work for you. So I'm going to start with about a 6 1/4 inch piece of my 12 gauge wire. Now this is on a circle here and it's quite stiff. So you want to straighten it out the best you can so that you can measure 6 1/4 inches. Like this. And then I'm just going to hold where the mark is for my measurement, and I am going to use my memory wire cutters and just cut this piece. Now I'm going to set this aside for now, and I'm going to get an 6-inch piece of 18 gauge wire. So I've already cut this one and it's about 6 inches. And then I'm just going to grab my nylon nose pliers and just kind of straighten it out. You can straighten this out with your fingers too. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just don't want any major kinks in it or bends because you want your beads to slide nice on here. So I'm just making sure that it's fairly straight. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm going to take my round nose plier and my ruler here, and I am going to measure about an inch and a half down on the piece of wire. Get you in a little closer here. And let me readjust my camera a little bit. And now I am going to place my round nose plier right on that mark that I've measured, and I'm going quite a ways down because I want a fairly decent sized loop here. So I'm going a ways down on my plier, and then I'm going to push the wire over the top of the plier while I'm holding my plier flat like this. Then I'm going to turn my wrist, and my plier is now up and down. I'm going to bring this extra length of wire on the other side of the plier over the top of the plier, and then I'm going to turn my plier flat again and draw that wire underneath the plier. While I'm holding it, I'm going to hold on to both parts, this part and this part of the wire, and I'm just going to kind of crank my hand back a little bit so I center that little loop, and I'm going to do that again. There we go. Then I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers, and I'm going to hold on to the loop. I'm going to position the extra wire the same angle as my plier, just like this. Then I'm going to switch my hands just so I can wrap with my right hand. And then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to start to wrap this wire around the long length of wire underneath the loop here. And I'm going to wrap it twice. And then I'm going to grab my flush cutters, and I'm going to cut that wire very close. Then I'm going to grab my crimping tool, and in this first divot where it's round here, I'm going to squeeze that little piece of wire down so that it's not pokey. And now this is what I have. Just like that. And now I am going to put my beads on here. Let me back off just a little bit more. I'm going to start with a bead cap, then a 6mm pearl. On this one I used a little spacer bead and a pearl and a spacer bead, and then bead caps too, so you can do it any way you want. So I've got a bead cap, and then I'm going to pick up a 6mm round, and then a bead cap. Then I'm going to pick up 4 of my disc beads onto my wire. And then I'm going to pick up another bead cap, and I'm going to face the bead cap so that the dished out part is away from my disc beads, and then I'm going to put on a pearl. And then another bead cap. Now if you're doing the opalite one, you're going to do the same order. You're just going to be using your 6mm round opalites and your turquoise colored discs. 4 more discs, a bead cap, away from my discs, a pearl, then a bead cap towards my pearl, like this. And this is what I have. Now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers. I'm going to place them about the same point on my plier as I did last time, towards the back here, right about there. And then I'm holding my beads tight underneath that plier, push the extra length of wire over the back portion of the plier, turn your wrist so that your plier is now up and down, bring the wire over the top, and then turn your plier flat again and draw the wire underneath it. And then while I'm holding it, I'm just going to rock it back away from me a little bit so I center that. So now I have a loop like this. Now I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers. I'm going to grab onto that loop. I'm going to position this wire so that it is the same angle as my pliers here. It's a little bent, so I'm trying to fix it. There we go. And switch my hands and then begin to wrap. So I'm going to wrap until it 2 wraps here. So now my beads are somewhat tight. I may have to go half a wrap here. Yeah, so my beads don't just jiggle around on there. And then I'm going to cut this very close and tug it in with my crimping tool. If I can find it, there it is. And both sides are nice and tucked in, and this looks good. Now make sure that your loops are both exactly at the same angle. So you want to make sure that they're both flat like this. So you can adjust it if you need to. And when we're going to curve this to fit the bracelet, we want to make sure that our loops are flat against the bead mat, and then we're going to push it forward like this. So you don't want to be bending it when the loops aren't flat. So you'll get the wrong angle here. So I want to make sure my loops stay flat and just very gently angle this. And I can angle it more or less as I get my other portion of the bracelet ready. So I'm just making a very shallow little arc here, like this. And then I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to grab my 12 gauge wire, and I want to straighten it the best I possibly can so that there's no obvious little wrinkles or anything in it. And you can do it, a lot of it, with your hands, even though it's very strong wire. I'm holding it in my flat nose pliers, and then I'm going to grab my nylon nose pliers, and I just don't want it wavy. And we can hammer out a lot of it, but just get it as straight as you can, like this. And keep working it here. A lot of times if I hold it like this against my bead mat, then I can straighten it a little bit better. Like I said, this is a heavy gauge wire, so it's kind of a pain. But it's not perfect, but I can hammer out the rest of that. Now, I'm going to grab my ruler again, and I am going to grab my flat nose pliers. I'm going to place this on my ruler, and I am going to go about 3/4 of an inch down onto the wire here and grab onto it with my plier on the outside mark. So to the outside of my 3/4 inch mark, like this. And then I'm going to pick it up, hold it in my plier nice and steady, and bend that wire over. Just like that. So now I have an L shape. Now I'm going to do the other side exactly the same way. So I'm going to find my 3/4 inch mark, grab to the outside of it, hold on to it, and make sure that you bend it the same way that you bent this side. So we want to go up because this one's up. So we're gonna go just like this. Now you can take your plier and arrange it a little bit better also. And then I'm just going to try to straighten out whatever I distorted here. And now I have like a half rectangle shape here, like this. I'm trying to keep my wire from looking terrible and make sure both of them are in alignment like that. Then I'm going to get my baling pliers. Now you can make these any size you would like, but for what I've cut, for the 3/4 inch mark, I'm going to use this top one, the bigger of the top ones right here. And I'm going to place that one right on the very end of my piece of wire with the measurement that I want on top of the wire, like this. And then I'm going to start to bend it back. And then I'm just going to kind of bring my plier down and kind of jimmy it around a little bit till I get a little bit further. And then I am going to just change my grip on my handle here because I can't really turn the plier over. It will be the wrong measurement. So I'm just changing my grip, and then I'm going to continue to turn all the way around. Now this is heavy gauge wire. That's why it looks like I'm struggling a little bit, because it's tough wire. So you just have to kind of manipulate it the best you can. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Place the measurement I want on the top, at the end of the wire, start to turn as far as I can. Then I'm just going to reposition my hand on the plier here so I can continue to turn, and I'm just going to keep turning all the way. And this is what I have now. And now I am going to grab my bracelet mandrel. Let's back off a little bit here. Sorry, you got a view of the ceiling, I think, for a minute. And let me bring this down here. And I'm going to have to work on it kind of laying down so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put it a little ways down, and I'm just going to start to wrap my wire around it. Now, if you notice, my loops are flat against the bead mat. That's the way you want to position it so that they're the proper direction. And I'm just wrapping it around. I don't know exactly where I want it to be on there yet, and you can see it's kind of weird looking right now, but I want to see how big I need it to be for this. So I'm just going to kind of put that there and arrange this out. Now I can drop it back on my mandrel, and I'm going to back off again, see if I can do this so you can see it. I'm just going to arrange it back on my mandrel at that measurement, and then I can kind of push these little circles in, and I can take my hammer and I can establish my shape by gently tapping. Now this is plated wire, so we don't want to hammer it to death. We just want to gently get the shape that we want. So just gently tapping it. And on an oval, you have to watch that you don't get it off as you're doing it, like that, because then your shape will be weird. You want your shape to stay with the shape of the mandrel. Let's see what I've got. It's still not too great. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to put it on here and just squeeze these down. Get it the best I can. Now I will hammer it out again to make sure it's nice, but at this point I just want to make sure I've got the size that I want. And that's just about perfect. So that's why I like to make this first. And of course you can straighten this out, or you can bend it in more too to accommodate the space you have. But with the measurements that I've given you, that should work fine. And if this is way too big for you, or you want a smaller focal, then you'll just adjust the way you make your base here. And make your little thing first and make it small, your little front, so that you can adjust your base to it. And then I'm going to just kind of adjust this in a little bit. Now, I'm going to take one side of my loop here. I'm going to select a loop. And I'm going to get my flat nose pliers and I'm going to raise this loop up. And I'm going to drop this down with the curve that I've created out. And then I'm going to close this. So you're just cranking it up and then you're closing it back down. Now on this side, adjust that, I am going to cut this loop so that I have an opening to put this side on. So I'm going to grab my cutters. Where are you? And I think I'm going to go just a little ways in here. Let me get you closer so you can see. So I think I'm going to cut right about here. And you can adjust this. It's better to cut less than more at first. And if you need to cut more, that's fine. Okay, here. Then I am going to grab my round nose pliers and I'm just going to kind of bring this in. So I'm putting it towards the end and I'm bringing it in for more kind of a hook look like this. And then I'm going to bring this around and I'm then going to squash this down a little bit. My flat nose, very gently. Just squash it down so that it retains your bracelet top a little bit better. Now you can adjust this several times. You can take this portion and move it up a little bit if you need to. You can move it down. You can do whatever you need to do to make it work. I think I want to bring this in a little tighter like this. And then you may have to put it on and adjust it some more too. Now, the back portion of my bracelet is still wonky. So I have opened my bracelet here. And actually, I'm going to close it and put it on here so I know exactly where I want to adjust it to. So I've closed it. Let me get out here so you can see. And I've just dropped it on the bracelet mandrel like this. Right there is where I want it. And I don't want to push it too crazy because I don't want to make it huge. I just want to form the back of my bracelet nice and pretty so that it doesn't have all these weird angles to it or look like it's been squished. I'm just going to tap it until I get it to look the way I want it to look. You may have to take it off, look at it, and do it a couple times. Yeah, it's still not quite the look I want. Still got kind of a funky shape. So I'm just going to continue doctoring it up. And it has a lot to do with the fact I'm using an oval. If I get it off the oval shape just a little bit, then I get one side kind of wonky. But, yeah. That looks better. And you can see there's my previous one. Here's my opalite one. And I started making really big loops when I very first started. So that made me have less wire to work with too, because I had these great big loops, and then I decided I don't need that big of a loop. With this one, I'll probably draw it in a little bit with my round nose plier too, because it's kind of big. But you can adjust it so you can lift it. You can also adjust the angles of your front part so that when you put it on, it will go on and off easily. Let's see this one. Yeah. So now I'm going to try to put it on, and you would think this would be really easy to clasp, but it's not that easy to clasp. So let's see if I can do this pretty fast. You have to get your angle just right on your wrist all by yourself, and sometimes it's not so easy. There we go. But I did it. And that's what that looks like. And boy, is that cute. And it does stay pretty well. I mean, it looks like it should just fall right off, but it really doesn't. It stays on there pretty nice. And my hook isn't too bad. I can bring it in a little bit more too if I feel like it needs to come in a little bit more. I can do that too. Now, I've made some matching ones with the 3 beads like this. And what I've done is when I made this one, I cut 7 inches of wire, and that way it's come around more and the little loops are close. So I've done the exact same thing with this one that I did with this one. I just made it longer, and then I can just grab another piece of 18 gauge wire and make my front for this. Now I did use a couple little spacer beads and these little weird kits. I've been using these like crazy. Really good investment, I guess. So I'm going to grab this little kit that I've shown you in the last couple videos. There's these 2 little flat rondelle type of beads here. You can use any spacer bead you want or none at all. It doesn't matter. I'm going to cut another length of 18 gauge, and 6 inches is probably too much, but I'm going to cut that if I can find my flush cutters. And I am going to grab my round nose pliers again, and you can make these. I made one with some amethyst that was in my own stash. I made one with a piece of turquoise and a couple bead caps, and I really like this one. I wore it around all day and it stayed on nice and it worked really good. So you can grab whatever beads you have in your stash and you can just make your base, make the front first and then make your base to adjust. I just happened to know that this one needed to be longer and closed, so I already made the base. Excuse me. And now I'm going to push that over the top like that, just like I did before, and make it a little further down so my loop is wide. Bring it around, just like I showed you before, and grab my flat nose pliers. Where are you? Where are you? There you are. I lose everything as I do this. It could be right in front of me and I won't see it and drive myself crazy with it. I swear that there's a hole in the ozone layer that all my stuff flies through. I know there is. And then I'm going to wrap it twice. Just like that. Cut it. Squeeze it down. Straighten up my wire. Then I'm just going to put on a spacer bead and 3 of these 8mm beads. These stack really nice with the others. So I made one in the teal, like it's in your opalite bag. They stack really nice with these. And then I made a turquoise one for this stack and a purple one for this one. These are actually really nice amethyst beads, nice expensive gemstones, and I decided I'm going to use those because they're so pretty. So they stack nice. So I'm going to put my 3 beads on and my spacer bead, and then again I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, positioning it to where when I make this loop, it's going to be the same direction as the loop on the other end. So I'm going to push that over, bring my wire over the top, bring my wire underneath, and position my hand back a little so that I center my loop. Then I'm just going to pick up, not those, no, these. And I'm going to switch my hands because my right hand is the only one that's worth a darn. And I'm just going to start turning my wire until I tighten my beads on there. And right about there is good. And then I am going to cut this, tuck it in, and then again put these flat and then push them forward away from me like that. Let's see if that works. And then I'm going to kind of just draw this out a little bit because it's in a little too much. And once I draw that out and get it where I think it should be, then I'm going to put it back on my mandrel. Back off here. I've got too much stuff everywhere. Yes, I was going to say the other word, but I decided I wouldn't, so, you know. I'm being nice, which is a rare occasion. Usually I sit down here and cuss at my beads. Yes, I do. I really do. I will admit it. There we go. Now, I can put this one on by opening this with my flat nose pliers. Again, you're just going to crank it open and drop on one side. And usually I kind of look and see which side has the bigger loop, and then I put the smaller loop on this side. And then I close. And then make sure I dropped it on with my angle correct. I did. Now I can kind of doctor this over and put that on there. See what I've got. Now I am going to, I think that cut that I made is fine, but I'm going to kind of squish it in. Now just do this gently, guys, very slowly and gently. And let's see if I made it worse or better. I might have turned it in a little bit much, but it's not too bad. Now I can grab my mandrel again, open this up, put this back on the mandrel, and you can see that that just dangles there. And then I can get my position correct so that I don't distort my shape, and then I can shape it up again. This will work hard in it, help it keep its shape as you wear it, and just make a nice shape for you so that your bracelet is pretty like that. And gosh, there's stuff everywhere. Oh my goodness. And now I have another bracelet. Now, you need to sometimes adjust these. I'm going to bring this down a little bit and put it on a couple of times and see if it works. If you're having a hard time with it, then adjust it some more. So this, I could use a little bit of angle in on this. So I'm going to grab my pliers and just angle this in a little. Yeah. And angle that out a little so that it will clasp for me better. It takes a little adjusting. You have to work with it a little bit so that you can get it to clasp nicely. And just doing it by yourself is a pain in the rear end anyway, but it does work. Putting on bracelets is always such a joy. There we go. So that's what those look like. And then I have my purple one. This one I think I made smaller. I think I would put it towards the front of my wrist here. Oh, poopananny. Okay, so just make sure that when you put it on, the loops aren't all tangled together. You want it nice and organized so that you can, and I haven't really messed with this one much, so I'm not really sure if it, yeah, it's in a pretty good angle there, yeah. So now I have some stacked bangles and they turn out really pretty. And like I said, just play with it a little bit. Make a couple, make one, keep making adjustments to it, cut it, change it, do whatever you have to until you kind of get an idea of the size that you want around the back of your wrist, how much space you want in the front, what beads you're going to use, and then you can, I've made several, so now I pretty much know just by looking at it what size I'm going to need. I knew I needed for this one, I needed a little less space in front, so I cut a little bit more wire. So I cut 7 inches for this one. This was 3 or 6 1/4. This one was probably about 6 1/2, I would say. And also it makes a difference on how big you make your loops. Now, like with these, I made my loops bigger, so I had a little less wire to work with as far as around the front too. So you can make your loops bigger if it looks like you don't have enough space for whatever it is you put in the front, or you can make your loops smaller. So that all of that just works together, and it makes a really pretty set. So let me grab the opalite one since I have the purple ones on, and here's the colors I've made to go with this necklace. So I made this little choker in the last video, and they are really cute together. Yeah, where's the earrings? Oh no, I lost my earrings. Well, there's one, and my cat gets up on my desk and kicks my stuff around, and you know, let's have someone to blame for my disorganization, huh? Okay, so I can't find the other earring. It's floating around here somewhere, and as soon as I turn the camera off, I'll find it. But you get the gist. That is what that set looks like. I guess I should actually show it to you. Let me see. And that is what that set looks like. I think that that's really cute. And then the purple one, of course, goes really good with these. So anyway, that's a little bracelet that you can play with, and I hope you enjoy doing that. Just make sure to get copper plated wire. Don't get aluminum wire because it won't hold its shape worth a darn. It's just way too soft. You don't want it to be that soft. You don't want it to be hard like memory wire, but you don't want it to be really, really, really soft either. So the copper plated craft wire is good, and like I said, I found one that you can reference. I'll put a link to it that's on Amazon, and even if you don't buy it there, then you can know what it is I'm using. And you can probably, I think I bought this one at Michael's, so there's probably several places, different bead distributors and such that you can get it from. Anyway, thanks for putting up with my rambling. I've had way too much caffeine, and I hope you have a spectacular day. Bye-bye.